In 2017, long before the pandemic changed our lives, South Africa faced another public health crisis.
She got it from me while I was pregnant.
Listeriosis, a foodborne disease, caused illness and death across the country.
This was the largest and deadliest outbreak of listeria ever recorded in world history.
Over 1,000 people were infected and 218 people died.
There is no direct link with the deaths to our products.
But the battle for justice is ongoing.
This is the beginning of a journey that could take us to any province in the country, but it's taking us to Bloemfontein. And we're speaking to one of the victims of a national outbreak of a disease that was brought under control 6 years ago, but one from which the victims are still suffering.
Mother of three Annelies Leroux was told she wouldn't conceive again, so was overjoyed in February 2018 when a gynecologist said she was expecting another boy.
He showed me on the sonar that everything is fine. Everything looked good, and he just mentioned that this little baby is very busy. He's very busy.
But just a few days later, she was rushed to hospital with a high fever.
There I got the devastating news that my baby is dead. There's no heartbeat anymore. It didn't make sense at that stage because I know it was a miracle.
Blood tests confirmed that Annelies had listeriosis, which had infected her unborn baby. Over 140 mothers suffered stillbirths and miscarriages, but these were not factored into the final death toll.
This is a pathogen that targets the weak and vulnerable, so people living with a compromised immune system. Almost half of the cases were associated with pregnancy, and an overwhelming majority of the dead were either unborn children or infants infected in utero or during birth.
Next, we go north to Limpopo to meet 7-year-old Teto, living with the effects of listeriosis contracted in the womb. Her mother, 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗃, was told her newborn had hydrocephalus.
They found out there is water accumulating in the brain. Very painful. That's when the painful journey started. After they told me that they're gonna take her to theater for operation, that's when reality kicks.
How old was she?
18 days.
Doctors inserted a shunt in Teto's head to drain the excess fluid. In a short life, she's had 6 operations to replace the shunt.
The medical aid ended up being exhausted. And for Teto, for her 6 operations, it's more than 600,000. We had a lot of deaths. We are not coping. Absolutely not coping.
𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗃 says she knows exactly where she contracted listeriosis. Craving polony and Viennas during her pregnancy, she was a regular customer at Enterprise in Polokwane.
I loved Enterprise food. I loved those ready-to-eat foods. I went to support this big business to grow so that I can kill my baby.
Having once worked in a food factory, Annelies took samples from her own fridge, including Enterprise polony, and gave them to health officials.
Were you able to prove which product you contracted the listeriosis from?
The NICD contacted me. They told me the samples I gave them, the information I gave them, played a crucial part into the investigation, and they could actually trace the source. I always felt like my son, he can't just die for nothing.
In 2018, we brought you the story of the hunt for the source of the listeriosis outbreak. This is where the real detective work was done, in a laboratory using whole genome sequencing. Dr. Juno Thomas from the National Institute for Communicable Diseases led the team that used cutting-edge DNA analysis to identify the killer bacteria.
All our human cases, we've done this whole genome sequencing on to date. 91% of them belong to a single strain, and that's our outbreak strain.
The outbreak strain 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗶𝘆 was eventually traced to polony produced in the Enterprise factory in Polokwane.
In total, over 340 samples were taken. 104 yielded Listeria monocytogenes. That's almost 30%.
But our scientists went a step further. They were able to match the strain found in the humans to the strain found in the meat products to the strain found in the factory in Polokwane.
Over 90% of patients develop disease from the outbreak strain 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗶. Now we have evidence from the factory that both the direct environment as well as polony products was contaminated with 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗍.
So this is ground zero. Scientists proved that the listeriosis outbreak started here at this factory. The 𝗧𝗵𝗶 strain of Listeria, which was responsible for the vast majority of infections, wasn't found at any other location or facility except right here in Polokwane. Enterprise was owned by Tiger Brands. The company agreed that 𝗧𝗵𝗶 contaminated products from its factory probably infected some people, but denied that it caused the outbreak. Former CEO Lawrence McDougall.
There is no direct link with the deaths to our products that we're aware of at this point. Nothing.
The Polokwane factory was closed, and within weeks, the outbreak was over. But to this day, the victims are fighting for compensation. 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗀𝗃 Incorporated is representing over 800 claimants in a class action against Tiger Brands.
So a class action allows a group of representatives to bring a case on behalf of everyone who has suffered the same objective harm stemming from the same source, essentially.
𝗧𝗵𝗶𝗶𝘶 is leading the team of attorneys.
We felt that it's a right case for us and that the people that approached us desperately needed our expertise.
Tommy works closely with his colleague, 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝗶𝘀.
So what we're looking for primarily is justice and compensation for those that suffered harm as a result of consuming Tiger Brands products. We've got claimants who contracted listeriosis as adults and lost the ability to walk. We have women who miscarried or suffered stillbirths, and they're dealing with the psychological impact to this day. And what I think is perhaps most devastating is neonates, so infants younger than 28 days. This was the most affected age group, approximately 400 children who survive listeriosis and who are suffering from conditions now like permanent brain damage, constant seizures, and other developmental issues.
In court papers, Tiger Brands denies all these allegations. To assist with this case, the team brought in Bill Mahler, the most prominent foodborne illness lawyer in America. What did you find significant about the South African outbreak?
Frankly, the good thing is that, the NICD did a spectacular job. They found positive Listeria samples in the plant that were an absolute genetic match to the ill and the dead in South Africa. And that's really super important to understand, that there is absolutely, unequivocally no question that Tiger Brands was the source of this outbreak.
The NICD has declined an interview, saying they won't be commenting publicly at this time. However, their research has been reviewed by international experts from the Center for Disease Control in America.
I retained some of the best experts in epidemiology and listeriosis in the world. They have absolute, unequivocal scientific backing for it.
Tiger Brands declined an interview with Carte Blanche 6 years ago, and they're declining an interview now. In a letter to us, they say, "We're saddened by the impact listeriosis had and continues to have on the lives of the victims, and are committed to resolving the class action lawsuit in the shortest possible time."
They also say the legal team is preparing for trial where liability will be determined by the court. So there's clearly no intention to settle here.
Despite this commitment to a speedy resolution, the victims are still waiting. The class action was certified 6 years ago, but has faced one delay after another.
If we were dealing with a reasonable defendant, this case should have been long settled. The issue here is that Tiger Brands has utilized just about every legal technicality available to them to delay this case.
Let me see your toy, 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃. Give me. Thank you.
In the meantime, victims like 𝗬𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 are struggling to cope. She too contracted listeriosis while pregnant. Her son, 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, was born at 31 weeks with cerebral palsy.
Looking at my child, it's a constant reminder of enterprise and Tiger Brands and everything.
She's doing her PhD in mechanical engineering at UNISA, but can only visit the lab once a week. 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, now aged 7, is totally dependent on his mom.
When he was 6 months, he had a first shunt. So that was his first operation, but that was not the last operation for him.
How many operations has he had?
He had his shunt replaced in 2022. And afterwards, we had a PEG. He's feeding through the stomach.
𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 has already had one operation for the hip dislocation caused by his condition. He's scheduled for another next year. As a single parent, 𝗬𝗃𝗃𝗃 is struggling to cope financially with his son's needs, a special diet, adult diapers, medical bills.
As you can see, I'm balancing him, balancing his head, the entire body. So it means that 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 is a dependent, possibly for the rest of his life.
What? If you take a case like that, we can estimate that to be anything between 15 and 20 million rands. And if you multiply that by the number of kids that we have, you start to get closer to the billion rand mark.
If the Tiger Brands outbreak had happened in the United States, Tiger Brands would be facing at least $1 billion in damages.
$1 billion?
$1 billion US in damages. If this case goes to court, the court will find them liable, period.
But Tiger Brands has liability insurance with SHA Risk Specialists, a division of Santam.
They're the ones who have taken over the litigation on behalf of Tiger Brands, and it would be them who would be liable to pay this amount out.
According to Tiger Brands, Santam appointed experts to review the scientific research 6 months ago. The review is ongoing. Santam has nothing to add to Tiger Brands' statement, saying it would be inappropriate to comment at this stage.
What has been your opinion of the legal strategy employed by the insurers over the last 6 years?
Delay, because that allows them to make money off the interest that is earned by the money reserved for this eventuality.
It's ridiculous. Tiger Brands should be forcing the insurance company to do the right thing by their customers.
It feels like a lack of integrity, a lack of morality.
But for now, the victims will have to make do with media statements.
Tiger Brands says it is saddened by the impact which listeriosis has had and continues to have on the lives of the victims.
Those are liars. They are not saddened by anything. If they were saddened, they would have done the right thing long time ago. This is 7 years now.